Welcome to Jazz Therapy, where we explore the intersectionality of jazz, the psyche and psychoanalytic thought, spirituality, and consciousness. I'm your host, Jessie Shapiro. Have patience with everything that remains unsolved in your heart. Live in the question. Rainer Maria Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. Quote, "If I cease searching, then woe is me, I am lost. That is how I look at it. Keep going, come what may." Vincent van Gogh, The Letters of Vincent van Gogh. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jazz Therapy. This is Season 2, Episode 6, entitled How We Bear and Thrive Amidst Uncertainty, and the music of Erroll Garner. I am absolutely delighted to be here with you. It's been about a month since the last podcast that I recorded. I have really missed doing this, and yet also I really wanted to take my time to record a podcast that I knew would be quality. I always write kind of a script / outline, and I kind of needed to just process and go through some life situations that manifested themselves, and so everything came together, and here I am today. And the theme of today is really uncertainty and how we as human beings handle uncertainty. And so I'm going to talk about uncertainty from a psychological perspective, from a depth-oriented therapy perspective, from a spiritual perspective. Then we will do a meditation to care for our feelings and any uncertainty that we may be holding about what is happening in the external world. There is a ton of political upheaval in the United States and around the world, for that matter, because the politics and leadership of the United States have global, far-reaching influences that affect really the whole planet, billions and billions of people. And then any personal uncertainty that you may be facing, that I am sort of bearing right now. So we'll do a meditation around that. And then we will listen to the music of Erroll Garner, an incredible, wonderful jazz pianist who is the perfect choice for today. And I will get into talking about why he is the perfect artist to help us and teach us about bearing with uncertainty. Right now, the world really does feel full of turbulence and uncertainty with the new presidential administration in the United States. We are dealing with dismantling of entire wings of the government, lots of firings of federal employees, and then the judicial system as of late is stepping in to regulate and stop further overreaches of the federal government. And I'm very grateful to all of our federal judges who are just holding it down with their excellent jurisprudence to put checks and balances on the government, the federal government, especially the president right now, because this is what our Constitution was designed to do. However, there's a ton of uncertainty for all federal employees, just in general, especially for undocumented immigrants who are really under siege and being targeted right now, and who are vital to the spiritual, cultural, and economic health and psyche of the United States of America, because we are a country built from immigrants, all of us whom were undocumented at one point coming here. Also, food costs are exorbitantly high. The price of eggs, for example, and many families and people are struggling to make ends meet while the rich are profiting. The stock market is in upheaval right now, and every day there are new headlines which sort of indicate more turbulence. I feel shaken up. There's a part of me that wants to just turn the news off at times and not really even take in what is happening. I also feel deep down this call to not just complain about what is happening, but really show up to make a difference by volunteering, by doing this podcast in my small way, by continuing to pray and do meditations. There's so many different ways that we can give back and help get our country through this time where we have really gone into the darkness. Our shadow side is really emerging, to use a Jungian term. And I also just feel a deep empathy for the suffering of all of the aforementioned groups that I talked about. And I feel angry and I feel shocked sometimes at actually what is happening, because sometimes the headlines seem so outlandish. They're like one continuous SNL skit. At least that's what I would like to believe. I mean, just absolutely ludicrous. And then personally, right now, I am experiencing a great deal of uncertainty in my personal life. I really do feel somewhat shaky about what might unfold for me in a few of my major personal relationships. I just also ended a long-term relationship with my spiritual teacher, and that is painful. And that was somewhat abrupt and surprising to me. However, it really is the right thing that needed to happen. And I might speak on this in a further podcast. Right now, I just feel a bit raw, and I'm kind of processing and managing it all. And so just as I'm sharing what's been going on for me, I am wondering, how are you feeling with the uncertainty, sort of globally and then also personally? What areas of your life are you maybe feeling some concern, some worry about? This might be a moment just to check in, and please know that you are not alone. And I'm glad that you're here so that we can just go through this together. Although I am a psychotherapist and I do have psychological expertise and years of training in in-depth oriented psychotherapy, I am a spiritual seeker and a pilgrim on the path, just like anyone. So I really want to be upfront and honest. I always talk about that on this podcast. I am a spiritual seeker right along the seeker on the path of individuation, to use a Jungian term, just like anyone else. And so I'm right there with you. So how do we deal with uncertainty from a psychological perspective? So let's go there first, and then we will look at the spiritual perspective. Firstly, we want to recognize that we are worried and concerned about the outcome of something, a personal relationship, finances, business, friendship, etc. Let us look at this from a Jungian perspective based off the work of Carl Jung. And this is a quote from The Marginalian. This is a really interesting depth-informed website I found, and it's www.themarginalian.com. And here are two quotes. "But the hardest reality to bear is that death is the only horizon, with numberless ways to get there, none replicable, all uncertain in their route, all only certain to arrive." And then the next one, "Uncertainty is the price of beauty, and integrity the only compass for the territory of uncertainty that constitutes the landmass of any given life." I found this website, and there is a mention of a time when a woman wrote to Carl Jung, and she asked him basically, how do I live? How do I live my life, given that life is sort of a series of uncertain events? We think we sort of know what's going to happen and we can predict. However, there is so much uncertainty. And he writes back a very cogent, lovely response. And Jung tells her that really no one can answer this question but her. He continues to say that if one wants to walk their own path, the path to individuation, which in Jungian psychology is walking the path to the self where all of our psyche is integrated. All parts of our psyche are integrated. The light, the dark, our shadow side, our masculine and feminine sides. And really to become truly who we are, there is no roadmap for this. The process is individual, lonely, and each person has to walk their own journey. And this involves reconciling opposites, getting in touch with the inner tensions. And there's no one way to do this. And Carl Jung goes on to say that really the best thing that we can do is to put one foot in front of the other and act with integrity. And he kind of goes on to iterate what we hear in 12-step programs. And there's profound wisdom in this, which is just to do the next right thing. And that if we do this, our psyche will kind of lead us and guide us, and the unconscious will lead us and guide us. And if we live life this way, then step by step, our path will unfold in a way that it is fated to happen. And this gave me a great deal of comfort. And even as I am reading this now, I feel that hearing these words, that I do have control over what I do as much as possible. And so I can choose to put my energy into positive outlets, of course, care for my feelings, like doing this podcast, for example, rather than kind of ruminate and get obsessive about things that are troubling me. And that really keeps me stuck and stagnated. So focusing my energy in a creative outlet, like being here today with you all, listening to jazz, painting, and that just going forward, that is something that we can control, and then trust in the grand scheme of things that we will be guided to ultimately where we need to go. So this is just kind of a small slice from a Jungian depth-oriented perspective. And for me personally, and also in my therapy practice, dealing with uncertainty situations where we don't know the outcome, this is the hardest for all of us to bear, because we naturally want to have predictability in our lives. We want to have control. We want to know what's going to happen. And oftentimes we just don't. There is excitement also, though, in uncertainty, if we can really embrace it. The flip side of uncertainty is that there are limitless possibilities. We can step into opportunities that are unexpected. And this is where synchronicity comes into play. Let us look now at dealing with uncertainty from a spiritual perspective. Everything in life really is out of our control in so many ways. And I read once that the great Indian saint Sri Ramana Maharshi once said that it is God that does it all. For example, I think I am driving my car to work and doing this or that. However, really, his point was, I am not doing this. Behind everything in the universe is the grace of God. And when I first heard this, I did not understand it at a deep level. I really was still sort of stuck in my own ego and personal autonomy. However, now I do. I'm going to read a quote now by Alan Watts, and this is from The Wisdom of Insecurity, a message for an age of anxiety. Here is Alan Watts. Tomorrow and plans for tomorrow can have no significance at all unless you are in full contact with the reality of the present, since it is in the present and only in the present that you live. There is no other reality than present reality, so that even if one were to live for endless ages, to live for the future would be to miss the point everlastingly. I really love this, and this is a lesson I am still learning, really, to live fully in the presence. And I highly recommend listening to Alan Watts. His lectures are on YouTube. His books are great. However, what really brings him to life for me is hearing him lecture. And
that thought is linear. You know, it goes one word after another. It's strung out in a line. We think thought, 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 thought in a line like this, one after another.
He is such a lovely orator. He is elegant, funny, self-deprecating, witty, erudite, self-effacing, and just magical to listen to. So here are 6 steps we can do personally to deal with uncertainty. And then we'll do a little meditation and we'll get to the jazz. I'm really trying to keep these podcasts shorter. Number 1, so first of all, recognize that we are struggling with uncertainty. This seems very obvious. However, if you're like me, you might just kind of get caught up in worry or ruminations, and sometimes become so fused with the feeling that you might even forget or not be able to see in the moment that you are gripped by whatever the story you're telling yourself about uncertainty. So number 2, identify what we are feeling. So that would mean, somatically, like identify what we're feeling. Okay, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling worried, and tell yourself, like, it's okay that that's there. And then what is the story that goes along with it that you're telling yourself? And then number 3, where is the feeling in the body? And this is something I'm really always working on, being in my head a lot of times, is closing my eyes, dropping down into my body and identifying where is the sensation somatically. Sometimes there's a color with it, a density, just really getting into that and letting myself fully, completely feel that. Number 4, you might visualize different outcomes as to, the way a situation would go and how you could respond. Sometimes it might just be seeing yourself at peace and accepting that you don't know where something is going to go, and just really being in that space, even seeing yourself, visualizing yourself, saying, it's okay, I let it go, I am here with this feeling. Number 5, meditate or pray. And then number 6, let it go as much as possible, and then move on. And this sounds easier said than done. However, when I say move on for myself, what I do, that is a conscious, mindful choice to redirect my energy into something that is really taking my focus away. As the adage goes, energy flows where attention goes. We'll breathe in through our nose, and we will pause at the top, and then we'll exhale long and slow. And if you're doing this and you're driving, just skip to the part after this where we talk about the jazz, which is the therapeutic part, the balm for our soul. Well, hopefully this whole show is. However, the jazz really is a big part of it. And if you are in a place where you can sit, just settle yourself. So we're going to breathe in 2 times through our nose, pause at the top, and then exhale long and slow. And we'll do this a couple times. So it'll look like pause, exhale long and slow. And do that again. Breathe in 2 times through our nose. Pause. Exhale long and slow. And breathe in again 2 times through our nose. And exhale long and slow. And now we're going to do a version of a Tonglen meditation. And I learned this in an online seminar that I took from Andrew Harvey, who is a mystic and scholar. He is gay, and he is so passionate and alive, and he's someone that has academic brilliance and also has an open heart, and those 2 things do not always go hand in hand. So we're going to do a little Tonglen meditation, and followed up by one that I kind of am hybrid making for ourselves. So I want you to imagine your worry about what is happening. It could be in the world, in a personal situation, it could be both. And I want you to imagine about 3 feet in front of you, maybe a little bit more, 5 feet, that there's kind of this black ball of your pain in front of you. And just let it take whatever form it does. It could be solid like a cannonball. It could be kind of moving. It doesn't even have to be a ball shape. Maybe it's a rectangle. Just see your pain and turmoil about this is this black ball of pain in front of you. Just let it be there. And I want you now to imagine that from your heart center area, your heart chakra area, that you're going to send this golden ball of light straight to this turmoil. And just imagine this golden light going straight to this pain, like a laser beam, and kind of exploding it and transmuting it into golden and white light. Just see this happening. If it's hard to do, just imagine that you're seeing this happen. So see this golden white light having been transmuted from your pain. And imagine now that you're breathing in this golden white light as we have transformed our worry and suffering about uncertainty. And I am now going to say, and please use whatever language works for you here. You could say universe. You could use the word God if you're comfortable. Or if you don't even believe in God, you could just say, I hope, or I release. So I will say, Dear God, I lovingly release any worry or uncertainty or universe, benevolent universe that I have over what is happening on a global level and also on a personal level. And you might bring to mind the specific event that we just worked on. And I release it, trusting that you will hold it for me and that all will be well. That all will be well. Since I cannot hold this on my own and I do not have control over how this may play out, I do have control over keeping my heart open and taking small steps in front of me each and every day. And thank you. And just come back now to your heart center area. And just take a couple more breaths. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And just note, how do you feel? So today we are going to feature the music and listen to 3 songs by Erroll Garner, who was a jazz pianist and composer. And Erroll Garner is the perfect artist to choose for today's episode on uncertainty. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you a little bit about his life and how he really lived deeply according to his inner wisdom and guidance. And this is why he is the perfect artist for today. He never learned to play music, and so he played according to ear, and he defied category. He was not bebop. He was not, sort of early ragtime. He was jazz, and he was the epitome of improvisation. He really had his own style. So in Jungian terms and depth-oriented psychology, we could say that his sound was a manifestation of his self with a capital S, the entirety of his psyche. He possessed this individuality that emanated from him, and he had a sound like no other. Now, I chose Erroll Garner, and I was introduced to him by my dad, Gordon, who I absolutely love and adore. And my dad really was one of the early influences who introduced me to jazz, and I just fell even more in love with it. And Erroll Garner came across my path because my dad is an Erroll Garner fan. However, probably like 4 or 5 months ago, he was at a yard sale, and he found this book. It's a 16-page comic book and two CDs you can see here. And this is by a French author named Michel Converson. And there are graphics in it and a short little bio of Erroll Garner's life, which is just delightful to read about. And then there are 2 CDs in it. So this became the inspiration for this week's episode. Thank you, Dad. I love Erroll Garner and am such a fan of his now. Erroll Garner was born in 1921 in Philadelphia, and he was playing piano by the age of 3 and has had piano lessons ever since then. So he really was a piano prodigy, and he was playing professionally by the time he was 7, which is astounding. He went to George Westinghouse High School, the same as Billy Strayhorn and Ahmad Jamal, 2 great talents. And also, I should say, Erroll Garner was born into a highly musical family. His father was musical. Many of his siblings were. He was just saturated in it. So he was kind of destined to be a musician. Eventually, he made his way, like so many other jazz greats, to New York City in 1944. And although he was not sort of a bebop artist, he did play with Charlie Parker. And what a combination the two of them must have been. He's best known for his composition of the ballad Misty that became a jazz standard. And it is said that he once saw Ravel play in concert and then went home and was able to play a good portion of the concert by ear alone. This is according to Wikipedia. So just imagine that, a world-class pianist, this is Erroll Garner, who went off his own intuition, not being able to read music. He deeply trusted his own ability, what was in his own heart. And this was really a giant leap of faith. It was like the music was coming up from inside of his own psyche and his own self. Also, another interesting fact, he was 5 feet 2 inches tall. And according to this book, he would have to sit on phone books sometimes to reach the pedals and be able to perform. He's also famous for recording a concert in Carmel, which became the best-selling jazz piano concerts of all time. And the album is The Concert by the Sea, which was recorded in 1955. And we absolutely are going to hear a selection from that. And I also love that Erroll Garner was very vocal, almost like listening to Glenn Gould on classical recordings. And the music is flowing with him and he's interacting with his own creation, which is just amazing. Now, many jazz critics that I found said that Erroll had a really distinct style of his own, which is true. And I completely agree. He reminds me of Ahmad Jamal in that way. And Cannonball Adderley said of Ahmad Jamal that one of the reasons that made him such a standout artist was that he never, quote, compromised his musical voice for the sake of anyone else. Now, this is true individuation in the Jungian sense. And Erroll Garner was the same way. He did not try to be anything else than what was deep inside of him. And what was deep inside of him was glorious and beautiful. Makes me emotional. That is the best thing that we can be, everyone, in this world, is just truly be authentic and walk our path of individuation so we are a manifestation of the self, of an integrated psyche. And this is why Erroll Garner was the perfect artist for us to choose today. Now, he died at only 55 years old, which was much too soon. However, we are left with an incredible body of work. So let's get to the music. So the first song we're going to hear is from the album Concert by the Sea, which I just mentioned. Interestingly enough, this album was recorded in 1955, and there's a great story behind this. So according to Wikipedia, there was a local promoter in the Monterey Carmel area named Jimmy Lyons, and he created this Sunset series of concerts for performers. And this particular one for Erroll Garner was held in a Gothic-style performance hall in Carmel. And the Erroll Garner Trio was booked to play this gig. And to make the audience sort of even more special and just fill the venue out, enlisted military men were bussed in from the nearby Fort Ord to join the audience. So we had jazz patrons and then we had military personnel, which is great. And it also shows you just how much they enjoyed the concert as you listened along, because they weren't necessarily jazz fans. They were there to sort of fill the seats, and yet they still just had a fabulous time. And originally, evidently, there was no plan to record this concert at all. However, Martha Glazer, who was the longtime personal manager of Erroll Garner, spotted a tape recorder, and somehow an enlisted serviceman from the Army recorded the concert. And evidently the acoustics were sats. The piano was not in tune. However, she pitched it to the record executives at Columbia, and the rest is history. And imagine, even with these conditions, Erroll Garner absolutely knocks it out of the park. So just speaks to that individuation, him playing from deep inside. So let us go and hear the song, They Can't Take That Away From Me. And I'll put the links to YouTube. You can also find these on your preferred streaming platforms. Simply stunning. And that brought up for me some memories of somebody I lost recently. So I felt some sadness hearing that. And then I also did just feel deep gratitude in my heart as I heard this song. Just really deep gratitude to have even had this loved one in my life. It's my aunt who passed suddenly in December, my Aunt Kanya. And just 70 years later that Erroll Garner played this incredible tune that we're just truly blessed to listen to. So I would put this song in the category of emotional reverie. So I'm curious, as you heard it, what you thought, how you felt, and what category of emotional listening you would put it into. And please do listen to the whole album. It is available for free on YouTube, also on the major streaming platforms if you do have a subscription. All right. Well, let us go to our next song, the tune Sunny. And this is from a compilation album that was recorded by Erroll Garner between 1967 and 1971. And the album was produced by Martha Glazer, Erroll's longtime manager. Now, I was really shocked the first time I heard this song. And I'm not going to say more than that. Let's just go listen to it. So transition now to YouTube or your streaming platform, and we will talk about it. That song is fire, everyone. What can I say? Just that I absolutely used to hate this song, Sunny, until I heard Erroll Garner's version, which is just makes me feel like I am so free. There's such a feeling in this song of having gone through a dark night of the soul, like gone through suffering and coming out the other side, just to appreciate the beauty of what it is to feel vibrantly alive. That is what this song is to me. And I imagine Erroll Garner did have to face racism. I imagine there was a lot of suffering with that as a very talented Black artist, a virtuoso pianist. And also, yet he continued to endure creating his art. And here we are honoring it and listening to it 70 years later. There's a comment on YouTube. A listener wrote, "This song slaps so hard," was the comment. And I love that. I don't think I could say it any better. So I just feel like I would put this song in the category of emotional galvanization. So as you listen to it, what comes up? Just reflect on that and sit with that for a minute. Well, now let us turn to our final song. We're going to hear a live performance of Erroll from a recording done in either 1963 or 1964. This is from a DVD, and it's on YouTube. I'll put the link to it. And we're going to hear him play Fly Me to the Moon. He's playing for an audience in a studio. And this was recorded, I believe, in Europe. I will try to get the exact location of that. And again, a shout out to our European brothers and sisters who were a safe haven and a bastion of receptivity of the art of jazz when a lot of jazz artists, due to Jim Crow laws, were not treated well, were discriminated against, and jazz was embraced and celebrated and elevated. So let us go hear this live recording of Fly Me to the Moon, available on YouTube. I'll put the link. To God, to the universe, for deliverance, for freedom, for beauty, for connection with all that is. So beautiful. And I also hear a simultaneous celebration of being alive, like a gratitude to the divine in this song as well. Just simply stunning. I think this might be the absolute favorite version of my favorite version of Fly Me to the Moon that I have ever heard. Frank Sinatra's is pretty epic. I would put that up there. And I know Frank Sinatra is controversial for some folks. However, I love me some Sinatra and I love me some Erroll Garner. So I would put that, in the category of emotional transcendence or emotional reverie as well. And I felt so mirrored. Like, that's a musical prayer right there, everyone. So I felt very mirrored right there. And how did you feel as you heard it? Just sit with that for a moment. What memories or reflections came up for you? Finally, I'm going to leave us with 2 quotes. The first one, quote, "As human beings, not only do we seek resolution, but we also feel that we deserve resolution. However, not only do we not deserve resolution, we suffer from that resolution. We don't deserve resolution. We deserve something better than that. We deserve our birthright, which is the middle way, an open state of mind that can relax with paradox and ambiguity. Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart, hard advice for difficult times." And finally, quote, "I can live with doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. I think it is much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers that might be wrong. If we will only allow that as we progress, we remain unsure. We will leave opportunities for alternatives. We will not become enthusiastic for the fact, the knowledge, the absolute truth of the day, but remain always uncertain in order to make progress. One must leave the door to the unknown ajar." Well, everybody, and that was from Richard P. Feynman. Thank you so much for being with me here today. Also, we have a new newsletter on Substack at Jazz Therapy. You can subscribe to that. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. It's just truly a delight to be back here with you. I'd love to hear from you. Email me at info@jazztherapy.com. I'd love to have a jazz pen pal or buddy. Just we can be jazz nerds together. May jazz therapy soothe your soul. Thank you for listening, reflecting, and being present with us today. Please leave us a review and comment. Jazz Therapy is edited and produced by Patricio Garcia. Sage Salmon is our social media coordinator. To connect with us, find us on Instagram and TikTok. Our email is info@jazztherapy.com. Check back next week for our next episode. May jazz therapy soothe your soul.